All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for a design subcommittee meeting of the Boston Civic Design Commission. Today's date is Tuesday, August 20th, and this is session A of the BCDC Design Subcommittee. The Planning Department is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. My name is Christina Rico, Executive Director of the Boston Civic Design Commission and Senior Urban Designer at the City of Boston. Before we proceed with the agenda, the open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that the commission staff is making an audio and video recording of this meeting. Please turn off your camera and microphone if you do not wish to be recorded. For the purposes of the record, I believe all Commissioners Evans, Manfredi, Morris, and Solano are present this evening. Tonight's agenda will include presentations for Drexel Village in Roxbury, aka Crescent Parcel, for 262 St. Botolph Street Multipurpose Athletic Facility in association with the 10-year IMP for Northeastern University, and 10 Malcolm X Blvd in Roxbury. Tonight's meeting's proceedings will follow the typical BCDC Design Subcommittee meeting format, beginning with a brief presentation from the proponent, followed by comments from BCDC commissioners, followed by public testimony. For our first presentation this evening, actually, we are also joined by Senior Urban Designer Megan Richard, who will give us just a small bit of additional context before the proponent team begins their presentation. And I am running my own show this evening, so Megan, are you able to unmute yourself? One moment, sorry. There we go. Megan, are you able to unmute yourself?
I am. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can. Okay. Are you all seeing your slides, Megan?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So this is just to give the commissioners and the public a little bit of additional planning context. I know this is unusual, but I think we feel like this is a little bit of an unusual project and parcel, so in process. So we just wanted to make sure that you have a brief further overview of the process. So in terms of the Crescent parcel that is now called the Drexel Village project, the process really began in 2014 and 2015. We had a community process for an urban renewal overlay in conjunction with the BHA's Choice Grant application. So that was part of the adjacent property, the Whittier Choice housing redevelopment, but we also understood that this parcel needed to be developed as well in the future. So that overlay covered but all the parcels, the adjacent parcels. And then in 2019 and 2020, we initially began that process for looking at the Crescent parcel and what could be developed there through the Plan Nubian community workshops that we held. So this is one of the parcels that was identified through the Plan Nubian process as city or BPDA owned property that we wanted to put out for development. So we worked with the community and developed design guidelines, and we actually had drafted design guidelines that we took out to the community, and they were revised through that process because community feedback was very strong about preserving the mature trees in response to our initial iteration, mapping kind of diagram ideas. So we then in 2021 issued the RFP based on that community feedback and the revisions we made to it. And then Drexel Village was selected by the community selection group, which is called the Project Review Committee. So made up of community members there in Roxbury, and it was the only proposal that incorporated the church property. You'll see some slides that show that our actual RFP did not include the church property, so it would have been a different, smaller project. But the proposal that was selected was from the planning office that incorporated their parcels and ours together to create this look at the entire block for redevelopment. And then in 2022 and 2023, the PNF was filed, and it followed the typical Our Lady process that we had pre-file conversations with them. And one thing that was really important was they revised the site plan. Their initial proposal involved the demolition of the existing church building, and they revised their proposal to preserve the church building. And at the same time, the Whittier Choice, the 2 phases have been constructed, and phase 3, that tall tower there on Tremont began its construction there along Tremont Street. And then at the same time, I think it's important to note what we kind of didn't outline here is that the Melnia Cass redesign was happening, and there was a lot of community feedback and a true movement to save that was successful in stopping that redesign and reconstruction of Melnia Cass to preserve the existing mature trees along Melnia Cass. So I think the community feedback we heard was part of that process and thinking about the existing trees there and how important they are in this neighborhood and in this part of the neighborhood. So now in 2024, BTD has launched a new planning initiative called Roxbury Resilient Corridors, which will include Melnia Cass, and then also parcel P3, which is just on the other side of the adjacent Whittier housing, that is now moving forward, which will expand the pedestrian and green network in the area. So we're really trying to think of these things all together. So yes, next slide. Thanks, Christina. So this, just so everyone understands, this was the massing that we initially came up with and took out to the community in terms of drafting the RFP. And, I think we held the same ideas that probably some of the commissioners initially thought back at the intro meeting last time, which was like, oh, a building should hold the corner. And so, that was our initial draft, and we took it out to the community, and that they did not agree with that take. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that we then revised the massing, and this is what we went back to the community with that really got their buy-in on issuing the RFP, was that we made the mature trees that one of our senior landscape architects had gone out and surveyed. And we made that the #1 priority in the urban design guidelines, was to, retain the existing mature tree canopy there near the corner, and then have the massing kind of step down to the neighborhood. So if we go to the next slide, there's another view of that. So you can see the existing church building and how we're really now, because of the proposal, incorporating that whole block kind of over to Ruggles. But that initially was not part of, it's not part of our property. So the RFP was just looking at like a 2-building kind of idea. We go to the next slide. This was one of the diagrams that we included in the RFP that really called out which trees needed to be retained, and that it was important to preserve them. So we said that you really needed to protect them and mitigate the loss of the urban canopy where possible. So we really did look at making sure that these could be retained, that buildings were set far enough back from them so that they really would create an open space here near the corner. Go to the next slide. And this just shows some of the broader connections that we hoped for, and issued another diagram we issued with the RFP. The feedback we heard was prioritizing public open space with those the tree canopy, and also not to wall off Roxbury from Tremont Street, and really think about making sure there was a connection to Tremont through this process. And so we really tried to make sure that we were saying to emphasize public open space on the parcel, make green space connections to that broader network, and especially the of redevelopment that is happening. So just across Ruggles is there to the left is the Whittier Choice. It has some green connections. And then we go to the next slide, we will see what we were thinking of even for that broader context. You can see, so you see Crescent there at the top, you see Ruggles, which has been redeveloped to a multimodal corridor. So really thinking of that as a green connection, which is what brings you down to Nubian Square at the bottom of the page. There's the green open space along Choice Way that happens through the 3-phase Whittier redevelopment project. And then of course, to the left of that is P3. So, and this was what was filed in the PNF back in October of 2023. So where they are retaining the trees. And then this was the site plan that you guys saw last month. Really showing 1, 2, and 3 buildings and how they're able to look at the site cohesively all together rather than if we had a proposal that didn't involve their property as well. I think we feel like it makes for a more complete site plan and redevelopment, and I think it's a positive. So I think there may be one last slide, Christina. That is again just reiterating the kind of open space connections and showing their proposed project with that broader green network that we're thinking about.
Great, thank you, Megan. So this will be the first presentation of the proposed project to the design subcommittee following its introduction at the July 9th monthly meeting. Commissioners Eastley, Kotoridis, Love, Manfredi, Morris, Ron, and Solano and Sykes were present at that meeting and recommended the proposed project for additional review in subcommittee. Commissioners Manfredi, Morris, and Solano join us this evening and should be prepared to deliver remarks at the start of deliberation. We, of course, still have a proponent presentation. I should have done this at the jump, but it's my understanding that there are no commissioners present at this time who intend to recuse themselves from deliberations. Is this correct? Seeing some nodding, thank you. And a reminder to the proponent team that the presentation will be limited to 15 minutes. I'll give you a halftime warning when we're halfway there. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite the proponent team. You should all be elevated to co-host to begin presenting as soon as you're ready.
Hello, Christina. Thank you. I will be sharing the screen. You'll see my screen, correct?
We do.
Thank you. Thank you to the Commissioner for the feedback at the first BCDC meeting. And our team has been reevaluating the site and its physical and cultural context. So we see the Drexel Village as a nexus of communities where established as well as transforming neighborhoods intersect, and also where social groups can connect, interact, and share spaces. We also are in a transit-oriented site that is undergoing significant changes. And the relevant new development you see highlighted in blue, and some of them, of course, Megan mentioned them, are the Northeastern University building, the Whittier Choice, and P3. Within half-mile radius, there are multiple public transit stops, a high school, university, and also art institution on the Avenue of Art. The site is nestled between Ruggles Street, Melniakas, and Fremont Street. From an open space perspective, there are significant open space around us. A lot of us are though sport fields and playground, but not much passive recreational green space. This is a quick jump back in history in response to some questions about the significance of this site. This is a plan from 1931, and the site boundaries are overlaid with a dashed line in the middle of the map. The site was located exactly where the Inner Beltway was proposing a spaghetti-like junction. In the 60s, the community was able to stop this highway, but not in time to save this portion of Roxbury. And in this small bird eye photo that you see on the side, you can see the extent of the clearing. Instead of the highway, the city planned the Southwest Corridor development that we all know, and the crosstown street that later was called the Melniakas Boulevard. In 1978, you can see this an aerial of the site showing the clearing. Today, even though it was not a highway, the Melniakas Boulevard was still not designed to be a pedestrian-friendly infrastructure, of course, at least according to our standard today. However, the large buffer on the two sides provided ample space for the growth of many trees. The tree preservation, as Megan mentioned, was the reason why the communities stopped the planning effort to improve Melniakas at least 2 times. And the community successfully fought against the removal of more than hundreds of trees. This diagram is showing the trees that we are keeping and the extent of the crescent parcel, that this was the original parcel of the RFP. And one of the guidelines was to keep the tree. The other guideline was to create an 8,000 square feet contiguous open space at the corner. Of course, the two objectives come together. Additionally, according to the urban forest plan published by the city in 2022, this site is included in the high priority zone, meaning that this area is of greatest need of expanding canopy. So as you see later on, we'll not only preserve in this tree, but we're trying to increase the amount of canopy. Another important design consideration is that the trees along Melniakas are planted on a mound, which makes not possible to remove it. We cannot remove the mound while keeping the trees, basically. And this is another diagram showing what Megan was talking about, that one significant advantage of our development team was the ability to combine the Crescent parcel with the St. Catherine Drexel site, dramatically increasing the available space to have more public realm. I will now hand over to Jinsi for the architecture.
Thank you, Cesare. So we are looking at the 3D view of the site on the screen right now, and we can see the existing historic St. Catherine Church and also the trees. So from the previous slides, we have understood the importance of preserving these trees and the historic church, and this became the primary goals among the many goals of the project. Next slide, please. Another important goal was to preserve or create this contiguous open space at the corner of Melny and Tremont, and also to create or maintain a view corridor that extends all the way from the Melny-Tremont corner, and it extends all the way to Rayner's Circle. So to have a nice visual connection across the site. Next slide, please. Also, the site takes up a very prominent corner in Lower Roxbury, which is created by this intersection of Tremont Street and Melniakas. And it presents to us a very tremendous opportunity to establish these key site connections across the different blocks and to create a continuous urban fabric. Next slide, please. So the design approach is then to configure the buildings to meet these primary goals. And it is conceived as 3 individual buildings. The first one that is positioned along Tremont Street so that it can continue the street edge existing along Tremont Street. The second one takes a L-shaped configuration that continues the street edge along Melniakas and also along Rayner Circle. And the third building is the one that abuts the church, and it helps us to continue the street edge along Rayner Circle. Next slide, please. This slide shows us the massing of the 3 buildings, and based on the feedback we received in the last PCDC meeting, we went back to the drawing board, looked at the massing again, and this is our revised massing. So we have B1 at 12 floors, we have B2 at 6 floors, which is the L-shaped building, and we have B3, which is a church right next to the church, which is a building right next to the church at 5 floors. So all the 3 buildings, they respond to the distinct conditions of the immediate context, but they also have characteristics like a 2-level base that starts to become this unifying datum, tying all the 3 buildings on the site. So each of these buildings now responds to the RFP goals, the primary goals of the project, and they respond to the distinct immediate context, the unique edges along the streets, and now they open up to create the courtyard in the center. Next slide, please. This is a building heights diagram, and we can see the taller buildings are shown in darker blue, and the low-rise buildings are shown in lighter blue. And now we can see how our proposal starts to tie into the context where we have building 1 that is continuing that street wall facade along Tremont Street, and we are building 2 and 3 that starts to belong to the low-rise neighbors. We are showing each of the 3 buildings as individual chapters of massing because of its response to the immediate context, so we can understand the distinct conditions. So we are looking at building 1's footprint right now. Next slide, please. So the massing itself, it continues the street facade along Tremont, and to better respond to the pedestrian scale, the building has a 2-level base that is aligned to the Whittier base. Next slide. And the massing also has a bend along the long facade, which gives us a very dynamic pedestrian realm, and also it gives us, it helps us to break that stout nature of the long facade along Tremont Street. The base of the building is pushed in. If you can go back to the previous slide, Chesre, sorry. So if the base of the building is pushed in and it's aligned to the Whittier base. So they start to work together as a forecourt to the church and also to the Ruggles station. Next slide, please. And you can see similar shifts in facade that breaks that wall-like character along Tremont Street. Next slide, please. Next, we will look at building 2, and here we're looking at the adjusted footprint of the building. So building 2 has 6 floors, and it also has a similar base that responds to the building 1 base adjacent to it, carrying over that datum between the 2 buildings. And it also helps us to create that pedestrian scale along Melnia, Cass, and Tremont. And then along Raynor Circle, the building also features direct entry units, so we can create a very interactive pedestrian realm that contributes to the existing character of Raynor Circle. This is the footprint of building 3 that abuts the church. So building 3 is at 5 floors, and we have a similar 2-level base. And in the next slide, you can see that the base is aligned to the church. And the setback in the massing above, it helps us to break down the scale along Ruggles Street. Next slide, please. In this image, you can see clearly that the base is aligned to the existing church. So it matches to the cornice of the church. This was one of the feedback we received in the last BCDC meeting. And you can see the massing steps back in a very formal expression, which is intentional only along this edge, so that it creates a very clear separation between the edge of the church and the building, almost like an artistic bow to the church. Next, we will look at a couple of views. So here we're looking at the view of the buildings from Tremont Street driving towards Melnia, Cass, and we can start to see how the building starts to animate the skyline. This view is taken from Melnia, Cass, and we are going towards Tremont Street. We have faded the trees so we can see the buildings, but in reality, because of the thick, nice foliage, the buildings aren't this visible.
You're about more than halfway, Jency. Just a few minutes left.
Yes. This view shows us the view from Ruggles Street, walking towards Tremont Street. And here you can see how building 3's base helps us to maintain the scale along the street. The next view is much more is a view that's taken at a human scale. So we can see that forecourt that's created by the building 1's base and the adjacent Whittier housing, creating a nice plaza in front of the church, which we will see in the landscape slides, but also a forecourt leading up to the church and also towards Ruggles Station. The next slide shows us the base of the building 1 and 2, taken at the corner of Tremont and Melnia, Cass. And we can also see that continuous visual corridor that is maintained, creating a nice opening in the site, a welcoming opening into the site. Next slide. I'll hand it back to Cesare.
Thank you, Jim. So as we said in different way, the mature trees are an asset, and of course everywhere in the city, but in Roxbury, they're also a symbol of community empowerment. So from this consideration, we had the idea of further increasing the number of trees by creating an urban grove with a clearing in the middle of the site. Over the past year, a community process has been initiated to discuss the art component of the project. And it took place at the Elma Lewis Center. We believe that art, of course, is the perfect vehicle to communicate and celebrate the history and the community activation that are linked into the site. And we are taking this pretty seriously, as this process that has been going on for the last year demonstrates. We are also trying to bring people in, and as we understand that some of you pointed out last meeting, each one of these edges has a different character, and we are working on creating different entries to invite the people in. A grove passage at Melnia, Cass, a more plaza-like entry along Ruggles, and a more intimate neighborhood entry along Raynor, next to the daycare program that is building 2. We are presenting now few sections around the site to have a closer look at these differences. Above, you can see the proposed section, while below there is a photograph of the existing condition. This section is cut through the existing grove of trees. The other section is, and the photograph is showing the mound, and the photo is showing an existing entry to the site on the east side of the map. This is section to Raynor Circle, showing the smaller scale that Jinsi was talking about. And here we are planning to improve the streetscape by keeping the same kind of character. This is section on Tremont Street, where we are proposing a wide sidewalk and a bike lane that is the continuation of the Whittier choice, as well as a sitting area linked to the Building 1 retail and community space on the ground floor. This is a section on Ruggles Street, where we are connecting to the completed streetscape improvement, and we are adding the open space and an open space at the intersection with the Tremont Street. In this section, you can see how we are still working on designing these spaces and their character. These are the three entries to the park, what we are calling the entryways to the park, not gateway. And the general idea here is as I said, one is more nature-based, the Grove Passage at Melnia. One is more public, more plaza-like along Ruggles, and the other one is more small and quiet towards Raynor. Other significant feature of the open space will be the central lawn surrounded by the grove of trees, the trellis and the seating area next to Building 1 that will provide opportunity for occasional events related to the community space, streetscape activation along Tremont Street and streetscape improvement along Raynor Circle, and lastly, a playground connected to the program of the daycare that can be open and usable for the larger public when the daycare is not using it. And this was the last slide. Thank you.
Perfect timing, Cesare. We'll turn it over to you, commissioners, for discussion.
Can you pull up, I guess this is the site plan, maybe? Yeah, okay. I just can't see anyone. No, thank you for this. I said on the previous meeting, much different design, so I do appreciate the changes that have happened and really taking in community feedback to make this more dynamic and integrative relative to community, but also the purposes that it's going to serve even beyond the design and the first shovel in the ground. I think the inclusion and the thoughtfulness around the interior with not just the preservation of trees, but also really the engagement of open space, both for the users of all those buildings, but also how community can find themselves in these kind of crevices, nooks and crannies, and still feel like it's an urban oasis, even though they're in the city. So I do appreciate that. One of the things I was not clear on, and it sounded like it was mentioned, but I just want to confirm, is Building 3 is connected to the church? But what is that building? Like, what's the purpose of it? Just so I'm clear.
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. So Building 3, which is of 5 floors, we have the lower 2 floors that has host programs, which is partially parish program, which will have activities for the church, and it also hosts daycare. And only the upper 3 floors will host residential.
So the first 2 floors, are those like connecting, like you can walk through the parish to the building, or you have to go around? I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, there will be a connection from the church to the parish programs in the new portion of the Building 3. It'll be connected from inside, yes.
Okay. Just an observation from me, compared to Building 1 and Building 2, Building 3 ironically lacks a little bit of shape. Thinking about the details that have gone into how Building 1 and Building 2 fit in the context, and there's angles and there's L shapes, and there's just different consideration against the edges. Building 3 doesn't have as much texture and shape that actually could be relative to the other designs of building 1, building 2. So I just want to lift that as something to consider, and also giving the users of the space. This doesn't seem to fully fit the story of all the other connecting buildings for me. That's the only thing I want to lift up. But that's all the time that I have. So any other commissioners? But thank you.
I'm still curious, and Bill Ron spoke about this in full commission, about the relationship between the church and building 3, the planning relationship, I guess. The church will remain having regular services, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And you'll be able, so will there be internal connection between the church and the community spaces in the building? I think you said there would.
Yes, there will be. Yes, there will be an internal connection from the church to the new building.
Can we go to the view, I guess it was a massing view of that corner? Yeah, that one. And I appreciate your respect for the gable end of the church, the stepping back, but I still find that not totally resolved. And I guess if the buildings need to connect, I'm looking for the connection to be something maybe more neutral. Maybe rather than the base of 3 simply abutting that gable end of church, that there's and recognizing that you want to make internal connection, but it becomes more of a, I don't mean this literally, but a kind of breezeway between the two. And so that there's a way from the sidewalk to see the whole church, or at least to see the shape of the church, whether it's from, that's Ruggles, whether it's from Ruggles or from the courtyard or from both. I'm not trying to separate the buildings. I know there's a functional connection. I'm trying to visually separate them as a way to let the full massing of the church be visible, whether I'm walking through the courtyard or down the street. And then I'm going to be very interested in the architecture of building 3 and how I don't know that I have a point of view, but I'm just interested in how the architecture is going to how those two things are going to coexist. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that if it's a neutral joint, it gives you a lot more freedom in the architecture of building 2.
Yeah, I piggyback on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And forgive me, this is my first time seeing this, so I don't want to. I want to sort of try to align with some of the previous comments here. I think this is a challenging site, and I certainly commend the work to kind of preserve the existing tree canopy and sort of use that as kind of a formal driver here. I think one of the things that does feel a little tough is it does feel as if the footprints of the building are kind of maxed out to be as big as they can, and I think it forces some of these kind of awkward juxtapositions there, where I think, if the church is something that we want to uplift and celebrate, there probably could be a more softer way of connecting the two, such that the architecture of it doesn't have to be so connected to it. I think one of the things that seems to work well of building 1 on Tremont is it does have some scale, some ability to sort of lift up a bit, and I think some of the moves there in terms of canting the massing are kind of smart. I think the other two are they do feel extremely squat by comparison, and I mean, I wonder if this building here that we're looking at, could that be 6 stories instead of 5, and then help you kind of mitigate some of that. It just, again, I certainly respect the sort of programmatic challenges you might have in terms of getting everything to fit, and high-rise code and all that stuff. But these two buildings do feel a little, it feels like it's just sort of the remnant of the parcel once you got rid of the trees, more so than like an intentional, I want to put a building here because there's a kind of clear idea behind it. So I think maybe some of this conversation around this particular building and how it meaningfully intersects with the church and not just kind of chips away at the edge, I think could be one way to just kind of find a way for this project to stand a little more confidently on those two buildings. And yeah, again, I know scale is tough relative to code, but yeah, I mean, I think if one of these two can be taller, such the other one can get smaller, I think that would certainly help provide some of the sort of breathing room that I think would be helpful here. But yeah, I think the building on Tremont Street, I think it's real smart. I think this sort of inclination to sort of hold the street edge, creating this sort of urban grove in the middle, I think all those kind of make sense. And just for me, it's the scale of these two buildings that I think could warrant some more pushing.
I'm interested in what Jonathan just said, and I got a question for Megan. When the big change was made in response to keeping the trees, which I think was the right thing to do, there was also a reduction in the massing. So is this proposal now maximizing the available FAR? Is that the zoning a result of the zoning and the community interaction, or is that a choice by the developer to reduce the scale? Because I agree with Jonathan that I'd prefer that the building on Melnia Cass, I prefer that the three are of three different heights. And the building on Melnia Cass maybe is a taller building, and then the building on Ruggles can get a little bit smaller and be a little bit more deferential to the church. But are we fighting a zoning restriction here?
No, I think they still have FAR because of the urban renewal overlay district. I think there's part of the issue is height restriction. Like we definitely said Tremont had the tallest height and they're maximizing that. And then it needed to step down. I think when they initially came in, they had building 3 lower, but we had real concerns about its functionality. It felt like from a program perspective, and honestly that like MOH is involved in the proposal, and there was concern about a feasibility of that. So we encouraged them to increase the height there to make sure that we have a feasible project and that it can all work together. So I think I don't have a clear-cut answer. I think there's like a little bit of wiggle room about it, but I think they are like the urban design guidelines in the RFP were clear that we were trying to be very sensitive to the Madison Park adjacent kind of townhomes and development and making sure that we didn't go too high along Rainer Circle.
I can give a little context from the development point of view. This is Jason Mansky from the architectural team. So part of it is driven by construction costs. Right. And making building 6 taller would push it into a high-rise building, which adds complexity and adds cost. So that was at least part of the driver for some of these heights.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And again, I think I appreciate kind of where you are and even with that constraint, again, to pick up on David's comment earlier, this building here in the foreground may be one where I'd love to see some pushing, because this one looks like it is 5 stories, right? So perhaps there is some space to go to 6 there, and
that's right,
and just and test that a little bit. But yeah, I certainly appreciate the sweet spot that we all need to hit here.
Yep.
I will add that they came back to us with 6 stories here, and then we had concerns about how the massing was interacting with the church, and I think you as commissioners at the introduction meeting had concerns about it, and so they've now revised it to 5. But so I think we're all in agreement that some pushing and pulling of that and the relationship to the church still needs to continue.
Yeah, this is what I get for not being at the first meeting, but I guess maybe to David's point also around at that next level of materiality and really kind of much more of a attitude about the architecture, we can kind of better assess how some of these things work.
Could we go back to the site plan. So, I have a couple questions. One is, first of all, recognizing that the trees provide the benefit that they do, that, you know, the neighborhood was right on, you just can't replace that. So you all have done a really great and important job of keeping those. I have a question about the play area. So on the base of building 3, there's both community spaces for the church as well as a daycare. Is that right?
So the ground floor of building 3 is made up of a daycare, the residential lobby that serves the floors above. The second floor of building 3 includes parish program space that connects back to the church.
I see.
And some additional daycare space on the second floor. And then floors 3 and up are purely residential.
Got it. And could you go over the numbers, units, et cetera, community, commercial spaces in the other buildings as well?
Sure. So the unit counts are a little bit fluid because just in the last time that last time that we met till now, we're sort of pushing and pulling, but
Sure.
generally building 1 has approximately 130 units. Building 2 has approximately 60 units, and building 3 approximately 21 units, something in that area.
Got it.
Building 1 also includes on the ground floor a small retail space along Tremont Street that's about 1,500 square feet. It also includes some community space that's roughly 2,000 square feet in building 1. Building 2 on the corner closest to Melnia up there's a small community space there as well.
Yep. Thank you. So what's going to be the makeup of the population here? And I guess that gets to the type of units that you have, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, studio. So what do you think is going to be the makeup?
Well, there's certainly a mix of all those unit sizes. There'll be studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, all the way up to 3 bedroom units. As far as affordability, maybe Bill can step in and talk a little bit about, the sort of affordability aspect to all of these buildings. Bill Grogan, I think, is on the line here.
Hi, thank you, Jay. Bill Grogan, President of the Planning Office for Urban Affairs, one of the co-developers. And yes, there's a mix of affordability ranging from 30% of area median income all the way up to 100% area median income and market rate units, as well as affordable home ownership units. So of the units that Jay mentioned, roughly approximately about 30 to 33 are affordable home ownership units that would be in building 2. That's the building that's along Melnia Cass. It's actually increased from the number of units we had in the original RFP in response to neighborhood and community interest in trying to maximize affordable home ownership as much as possible. And those will be a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. And those will all be affordable at 80% of area median income and 100% of area median income. And then the balance of the units are roughly about of the remaining units, roughly about 25% will be market, and the other 75% will be affordable. Again, from a range of 30% AMI all the way up to 100% AMI. So overall, in terms of the entire unit mix, between 70, at least 75% of the units are affordable at varying levels, and about 15% will be affordable home ownership units.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So to the issue of the church, which I think those have been really important discussions, and there's a part of me that thinks that you've done this great job of kind of bringing people in from various places, right? Stepping this building back has helped a lot to kind of get views and into that. And there's just no doubt that this is such an important space from both the inside and the outside. But I can't help but wonder, like, you've got this connection, but I wonder about the importance of that connection versus something like that. And I say that prompted by the comments from other commissioners about the relationship of the church to this building. And, you know, it's such a benefit to have that grounding presence of St. Catherine's there. I think it just adds a lot to the community. And I'm wondering if there is a way to either, you know, bridge over to that second floor for St. Catherine's and allow people to have views in to the space from this location. It might help dislocate and detach St. Catherine's from the buildings, but at the same time acknowledge that it's becoming part of a community, right? That's the message that you're giving right now, is that it's part of the community, but it's not a clear message. Right now, it sort of looks like you've added on to that building, when in fact, what you're doing is providing benefit for that, for the church as well. And wondering whether or not the width of this could be sacrificed a bit to maybe pull this building number 3 back, so that you have that, even if it's not a physical connection, that there's a visual connection through inside the courtyard. So that's one thing. And then the other is just sort of thinking, Cesare, about the uses inside here. And I know this is diagrammatic, you're really early in the stage, but, you know, is the play area in the right place? Is the play area something that that is only used by the daycare during the week, and it's open up to kids after hours, or on after hours and weekends? Like, how did the neighbors, right, in this complex get to use the play area marked as number 5?
You're correct, Lara. You got it right. It's mainly used by the daycare program when the daycare will operate, and when it's not used exclusively by the daycare, it will be open to the larger residents and accessible from the park.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to maybe even expand the play area so that there are zones that are for the daycare during the day. And I get the safety stuff that happens and difference in age groups of play. But I wonder if that being so close to the building and also serving just the daycare age, if it isn't less of a benefit for the community. And if there's a way to expand that area and at the same time close off those uses for the daycare kids during the day, but open it up after hours so that it starts to feel like a bigger place, more kids can use it. And it never feels exclusive because kids can go in there. And in doing that, thinking about, one of the best things about play is just the activity, right? And you'd have to be a pretty awful person not to appreciate the joy of kids, but we'll put that aside. So, being able to have seating around that so that you can passively watch that, because there's not a lot of activity in the courtyard right now. And I think that the space, rather than just being big open lawns, might be better to sort of have a meeting center and, maybe adding the trellis onto that as part of it, so that it feels like it's much more connected together, so that this whole zone feels like it's really for the community and a spot to meet. And this is your kind of shady, you know, quiet place, and you've still left over, you know, some lawn for more open things. But I think this space in general could really use some rethinking about how it might serve everybody. And by having that activity there, it really starts to give you that view in that there's really something special back there, that you know, that there's an interiority to this that you can see and appreciate just by walking by, which is why I also suggested that maybe you have some kind of view in there. So that's it. I said a lot, so I'll stop for the moment.
Thank you, Laura.
Commissioners, I want to be cognizant of time. We're running 10 minutes over, and I think that was because we asked for additional time for staff comments. So if you wouldn't mind, are folks ready for me to ask for public comment? Great.
Yes.
Okay. At this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public in attendance who may wish to contribute public testimony to raise your digital hand, and staff will call on you. If you're calling in by phone, press the number 9 on your dial pad to activate the raised hand function, and dial 6 to mute and unmute yourself. Please state your name and any relevant project affiliation information, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Okay, commissioners, at this time, I'm seeing no raised hands. So we'll consider public testimony closed. And while we don't need a formal vote this evening, it's subcommittee, we do need to have kind of general consensus about next steps for the project.
I think coming back to design committee sounds in order because of the level of comments that were discussed tonight. Do others agree?
I agree.
Yeah, there's a lot to like, but I do think there was some stuff that he's working on. I imagine too that we'd want to talk about the architecture at some point, beyond kind of a SketchUp massing there. So, but again, I think there was a good discussion, and there's a lot of promise around this project.
Yeah, it's absolutely headed in the right direction.
Great. Well, that sounds clear, and we'll work with the proponent team to follow up at another design subcommittee session. Thank you to the proponent team and Megan.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Our next agenda item is 262 St. Botolph Street Multipurpose Athletic Facility. We are joined by Carla, Victoria, Brian, Stephen, and Lynn. You guys have all been promoted to co-host. If one of you is able to share your screen, I'll just give a very brief introduction here. A proposed project at this location associated with the application for Article 80D entitlement for a 10-year institutional master plan for Northeastern University, seeking Article 80B large project entitlement, contemplates the demolition of the existing George J. and Hope M. Matthews Arena and development of approximately 290,000 square feet of university use in a single building on an approximately 2.25 acre site. This will be the first presentation of the proposed project to the design subcommittee following introduction at the June 25th, 2024 monthly meeting. Commissioners Easley, Evans, Gilly-Smith, Haseen, Coderitas, Ron, Solano, and Sykes were present at the meeting and recommended the proposed project for additional review in subcommittee. Commissioners Evans and Solano join us this evening. David Manfredi has recused himself from deliberations. Is it my understanding that there are no commissioners present at this time who intend to recuse themselves? Excellent. A reminder to the proponent team that presentations will be limited to 15 minutes, and I'll give you a halftime warning when appropriate. And with that, I invite the proponent team to begin presenting whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Christina. Good evening, everybody. My name is Victoria Abelina. I'm a VP for Campus Planning and Design at Northeastern. I'm joined by John Tobin and the design team. They'll introduce themselves. And just really quickly, Brian, are you in charge of the slides?
Yes, I am.
Do you mind just going to the next? Just really quickly, we filed this project as one of the projects for the IMP renewal. And so we'll be reviewing the IMP concurrently with this project. And it does have, if you could go to the next, and you'll be talking to the context slide one more, just to get to the IMP slide. This project is part of our East End district that is contemplating 2 other projects. And a project across the Gainsborough Street. The Gainsborough site is currently a garage that we're proposing to redevelop into academic and research building as well. So there is a lot of thought and conversation that's ongoing, that we're responding to the urban design comments and also BCDC comments around the public realm programming, mobility, and access, that does think of this project as part of a greater system in our campus, and it is not designed in isolation. So I just want to make sure that we share that we're continuing the work, we're revising it, and that we are early in comments and review process. We're about to receive all of our comments for the IMP filing as well. So we will be responding to those in the next few months and continuing that conversation. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm going to hand it to Brian, who is going to be doing most of the building design presentation and responding to your feedback. And Lynn will be talking to landscape. And we're here to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Victoria. Excuse me. Hi, I'm Brian Schabel. Good evening. I'm a design principal in the Perkins Will office. And happy to be back here. We just want to start with what we heard and key issues to address and consider based on our feedback last round. One was about material and color of the brick in particular, and the massing. The scale and configuration of the open space. How does the building affect or express mobility or movement? Sorry, I have a cold today. And additional information about the concept of the proposed facility and what the history of the site means. So we'll go through all these and talk about different scales of interaction with this building as well as we move forward. This is actually the existing, not proposed massing, but Matthews Arena, as you all know it, on St. Botolph and Gainsborough, historic older building, set back from both streets, but really parking lots on both streets, and also notably the loading dock off of Gainsborough. So that is the context in which we're starting. Obviously, very good access to the site with all the different bus and train sites. Victoria already addressed this. I just want to reiterate what she said, that we are taking very seriously the public realm and the relationship in our discussions with the IMP about the Gainsborough site, as well as the potential bridge over the T-stop, over the, trains, and the potential that brings to the site. So this is the current massing that we're proposing. We are just wrapping up schematic design right now and really interacting with the site in a different way. So we are trying to relate. I'm sorry. Relate the building to the site and allow for, while it's a bigger building, allow for the public realm to engage this in interesting ways. Currently, the existing entry is up in this northeast corner. However, we are suggesting that is moving to the west, more aligned with the university to the west, as well as the potential influence of this T-stop renovation, which is supposed to have a new entry and exit. So we see a lot more traffic coming from there, and providing queuing space within the recesses of the reveals of the base. We'll get into that in a little bit. First, about the color of the brick. So historically, this campus has been decidedly different. It is a brick campus, and for the most part, historically. However, it is a cooler palette. This is the historic central core of the campus, and light brick, light gray brick, which is important to understand. It's part of its identity. As the campus grew and expanded, the palette expanded as well. We see limestone, we see different brick, more glass, and most currently with ISEC and EXP. At the perimeter in particular, we see a more expressive and certainly a more diverse palette of materials. So we think there is flexibility. We feel there's flexibility, particularly with this campus in the context of itself and in the context of the community. So we are proposing an iron spot brick in the mass. And we really like the idea of this being that it's brick. Obviously, that's a very contextual material. It's got a scale that is different than most for this particular size of a building, but also there's opportunities to provide texture, et cetera, within that module. And also the iron spot provides an effect that we think is really important, that it moves along with the light. So one of the ideas that we've always talked about is the movement that happens within this building as an arena and as a rec center really is something that we want to accentuate in the building. So we've looked at ways to deal with that with the light, and we're looking at texture, we're looking at the sheen of the brick and the color of the brick to both pop it out, but also relate it to the context. So here's some examples of what this brick can do. You can see there's a very rich variation. I think our previous renderings were not showing how rich actually this iron spot can be with the variations within its sort of, I'll call it naturalness of production, but also how the sheen accentuates curves is really important. And also how texture and different coursing opportunities provide a different level of enrichment for the experience. This is a view from the corner of Gainsborough and St. Botolph, looking at the main lobby, as well as all the different textures that we feel engage it at a different scale. So while the building mass we think is very interesting in cutting back where we can and shifting things around relating to the datums of the context, and I'll get into that a little bit, we see the next scale down is using this texture to define many of these elements of the program. You can see 3 variations here to break it down a little bit more and then create these different ways of dealing with the windows and providing rich depth to the facade to engage it at a slightly different scale. One of the things that's very interesting about this project is the combination of these 3 elements. The arena is being replaced, so that's a big programmatic element, but combining that with the rec center and the team facility for basketball is something that's very unique. And one of the reasons for having the continuity of the form and the continuity of the material is we think it's very important to highlight the fact that these are combined. We're trying to make this not just an event structure, but a daily use structure. And the uniqueness of combining this, we think is very important. And we're trying to express that in the architecture. So you see that here, there's continuity of some of the form in certain elements, and there's also reveals that express these different elements. And at this scale, a little bit further back or closer than I'll say the massing scale, you can see how this facade is broken down, both by texture and also by these interesting ways we're engaging the windows in this. We're curving back the brick into the facade, creating depth and a shadow and a softness. So that, and along with the curved corners, we feel adds to the notion of the movement. It softens the corners, and it also is a reference to some of the softer architectural moves of the south end context with the bow windows, et cetera. Also importantly, you can see there's a rough datum that we're appreciating here throughout the setback with the existing context as well. So we've gone to great lengths to create a relationship with the scale of the contextual building, knowing that we are a large building, providing a large building here, but finding ways to relate to that. And then finally, again, the texture, looking for ways to break it down further. Here's a view from just inside Mass Ave on St. Botolph. Again, you can see a relationship with one of the historic buildings on the corner, and then looking at different ways to create texture with relating to the horizontality of the existing structure as well with this brick coursing. Excuse me. Here's a close-up. Again, we spent a lot of time trying to better render the brick and the variation and the rhythm of some of these elements than we had in the past. And we really feel strongly that this texture given the urban scale of this, this texture really breaks it down appropriately and still provides an animation that relates to the context well. Additionally, we are looking at ways to warm up certain elements, and in particular, these lintels at all the punch windows. We're looking at something that's a warmer color. We had discussions about and comments about the coolness of this. While we like the differentiation of this building and this material, but there are opportunities to provide warmth, and we're looking at that at a different scale that can be appreciated, particularly from below. Here's another view of the northeast corner. Again, different textures relating to the different major primary programs of the building and how these curving elements fold into the depth of the facade to create the window rhythm.
Just under 5 minutes, Brian.
Thank you. We also we did consider a warmer brick, but we still feel most comfortable with the cooler brick. We looked at different options that are certainly good precedents to consider. Next, Lynn is going to talk about some of the landscape opportunities we're considering.
So for the site design, we really merged our inspiration from the dynamic shapes, patterns, and tracking forms that are found in athletics with the hierarchy of abstracted transit maps. So really trying to draw, our inspiration from the local context. And what we really found too is that, these forms naturally are also being pulled from the building, but the scale is more of a human scale, pedestrian scale at the 2D plane. So if we go to the next slide, we're really working on developing this idea further to subtly assist in wayfinding, door hierarchy, and event queuing, while having a real sense of movement and playfulness in the site. So if we go to the site plan, we do have a number of doors in this building, and I won't spend too much time on it now because the main lobby is to that corner of Gainsborough and St. Botolph. So that's where we really want to draw most people in. But along St. Botolph, there's additional entries for various uses, mostly student uses, and then a special event use. And then closer to the T, we actually have a rec entry. So we really have a lot of porosity in this building, and we're looking at ways that the landscape design can really start to support how people can move through the space with various means of hierarchy. And then with these tracking elements start to overlay one another, what can happen in those moments. So we're looking at some fixed benches and other elements there, in addition to maybe then adding another layer of playfulness of what can happen and be deployed in the ground plane.
So that's really starting to talk about the pedestrian scale, how that's interacting. So we're looking at different opportunities to tell the story of the project and also interact with the public. Here are precedents that we're because we have such large soffits, we think there might be an opportunity here to look at those precedents and really create something that's unexpected. Looking at a more polished, we're considering more polished soffit here at the main entry. This is again at Gainsborough and St. Botolph, creating a lot of transparency and finding a way to have the pedestrian and the visitor interact in a different way. At night, this will be very engaging space as well. And then St. Botolph, again, a large reveal setback. We think these setbacks both provide interesting mass, but also provide good opportunities for queuing and covered queuing, particularly in the basketball and hockey season, which is critical. So along the St. Botolph, we think this is a great opportunity to have a narrative. We have two things we're thinking about. One is more student-based and the history of the university. Another one is about the site that we're considering and all the amazing cultural and athletic and happenings that have occurred here. So we're looking at both the facade and the soffit in that St. Botolph facade as well. This is a narrative within maybe some brick elements, and we're looking at a polished, a shiny, or actually a glazed brick that could be a lot more reflective as an option that could have a story within the brick. And another opportunity is perhaps going back to looking at the murals that are certainly present on the campus and the history of that, and looking for ways to tell a story that might engage the facade in a different manner. It may come down into the ground like the precedent we saw in the last slide. all along, we want to make sure there's a lot of transparency where we have it so that this facade is engaged. This is the main concourse of the arena and really engaging the outdoor space. There's a lot of area here that we think is a good thing. It provides obviously queuing, but also opportunities for engagement. We're looking at site furnishings that can be used day to day and also provide programmatic opportunities throughout the year. There's a night view. I have a few more slides about view sheds that were requested from further afield. This is back from Central Campus, looking up St. Botolph. This is a little bit closer. This is a view from Carter Fields. A view from Carter School, actually. So on the opposite side of the tracks on Gainsborough, looking to the north. This is just demonstrating that from Huntington and Mass Ave, you really aren't going to see this. And then from across the street from the T-stop, the main head house of the T-stop of the Mass Ave, what that view would be as well. And finally, a view from Huntington looking down Gainsborough. And I think that's the last slide.
Perfect timing, Brian. Thank you.
All right.
We turn it over to you for discussion.
Thank you. I can get it going here. This is super helpful to see. I appreciate the work, and I personally appreciate the additional context on the brick. I think it does help to understand kind of what you're trying to get at here, and these renderings are certainly more thoughtful in sort of understanding how that brick can be expressive, and sort of again sort of catch the curve, show the movement a little bit more. I guess I probably would encourage you to push some of the kind of carves a little further. I think it still feels a little timid in some respects. I think even the sort of zones where you have the change in the brick bonding pattern, it's kind of confined to a sort of rectangle, right? So I do wonder if there are ways to just think about pushing that more to just be more expressive, more fluid. It's a big, heavy building, which isn't a bad thing, but I guess I just wonder within that, are there ways to really blur and sort of push how we can get some more dynamism there? But I think the overall palette you have is really exciting, and a lot of these moves around the public realm, the mirror, I think are really exciting. I guess my comment really is kind of to lean into some of those a little bit more, understand that this is a big, heavy building. Yeah, I think one thing, and I say this with caution, but I think context is certainly important. But this is obviously going to stand out, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I guess I offer that relative to how we use context to ground certain design decisions, right? So I guess maybe I'm saying I want to be careful on how we kind of play the card of such and such move is contextual, because I do think this thing does announce itself and want to stand out from the neighborhood. Again, I think you've got some of the data that I think are smart and kind of acknowledging that, but maybe I'm just kind of picking up on a stray comment about context that I just want to celebrate that this is a very big, bold building, and I just want you to lean into that and don't feel like you have to conform too much, because it's frankly going to be impossible to, because you're building an arena.
That's right. Thank you. That's a good comment.
Commissioner Solano, we can't hear you, sorry.
Thank you. I mean, to me, this building is taking the university into this and the next century of what sports is, right? And that has just grown so much in the university community, not only here, but everywhere, right? Where you're going to get much more foot traffic to this than you might have before, simply because of the combination of uses. And I've been quite transparent about the fact that I really love the iron spot brick, but I also know that there are different colors of the darker iron spot brick. In other words, it's a little confusing. One of your drawings shows cool on the rendering and then warm on the detail that you provided, or I may have it backwards, but there are different variations in the darkness of the brick, and I don't I'm curious if you have looked at any of that.
We definitely have, and what we like about this particular brick is it does vary, and we are talking about adding some warmth to some of the detailing. So you were correct in that, and we did look at warmer bricks that relate, but they're kind of like trying to conform but not conforming, and we really like the boldness of this, and in particular how light affects this particular brick. I think is really strong.
Yeah, I agree. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about a red brick or brown brick. I'm talking about the gray brick.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yep. Or whether or not you've looked at, a combination of that, though I get that there's like a purity here that's really beautiful. So I myself just think as Commissioner Evans noted, that I think you could still push this a bit further to help with the overall massing of this. But you've done, some really beautiful things here. I think that it's been nicely advanced. And the landscape, I don't really have much to say. I don't think it's advanced a whole lot from before, but I think it's pretty solid. I can't really find much to comment on there, except if you could go to the site plan. On St. Botolph Street, that is where you were talking about having the history, right, on panels on the side of the building. Is that right?
Correct, on that facade.
I would be, having been somebody who went to a very large university and had very large buildings like this at the athletic complexes, I would just be careful about losing the transparency on this side. And it isn't sort of one or the other, but I think studying the balance between what is given over to the history versus what this view in particular.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with safety. Some of it has to do with the lightness of the base of the building. I think you're right that it doesn't have to be and shouldn't be the same all the way around the base. It doesn't have to be transparent, but I would be careful about making this stretch of the campus, particularly since there's going to continue to be expansion, making this edge of the building a little too closed off from the street. And I don't know if there's something a use behind this facade that kind of demands that, but
it's actually a programmatic element that is, really the main con. So as you enter in any location, you're walking up to the main con, and underneath the main con seats is really all the locker rooms, and it's chock full of locker
that's not
rooms.
beautiful to see.
Depends. But we have had this conversation before, and we'd love to find opportunities. It's just that's why we're looking for different ways to do this and engage the community and engage the public day to day.
And maybe it has to do with doing something reflective or something that just gives it some life and also just doesn't make it seem a little too isolated and frankly scary.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
So we are looking at different options for this particular facade.
Yep.
Because of the challenge of program, but also just how long that stretch is. Currently it's a surface parking lot, so it'll be an improvement from what's existing for sure. But we are studying and looking at options to bring play into that area because they will have a lot of activity and queuing, as you said. So we're going to come back with more because we're still having conversations internally of which way we're leaning and how do we bring that kind of whimsical and play aspects to the outdoors and tie it to the campus so that the students that come in to use it for rec will stay and hang out and use this part of campus that doesn't really get much foot traffic unless you have the reason to be in the arena.
Yeah, destination there.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry.
No, please go. Sorry.
so I've been like sitting here staring at this. Of course, what excites me is like the mural part of it, and then I look at the St. Botolph Street where it's just straight on, and you don't even notice that art. And or that mural, and I'm just wondering if there's a signaling of that moves people to experience it. If they're looking straight onto that building, if they see a lip of that across, that invites them to come to the building closer. If someone's across the street or you know, is from far distant, and so it doesn't look as plain, like, yes, but you know, maybe that bottom base straight across of those windows is like a signaling with kind of that mural work as something that's continuous versus the design itself, which can be in deep appreciation, but also could be inviting as part of welcoming in that space and towards the entryways. It's just a consideration given what I've seen so far.
If I may respond, I think the height of this actually helps a lot too. This is 20 to 23 feet in the air, so it's you know, you're not going to be seeing the edge of it like you would in an elevation. But totally get your point of inviting people in and making people more aware of it.
I'm actually going to sort of I think that point makes a lot of sense, but I'm going to sort of zoom us out, and I'd love to see the sort of longer views. Really quick, I guess. You know, again, I appreciate that this is sort of a heavy project. There is a certain kind of, yeah, that's a good view. That's for my pointer. It's monolithic, which again, I appreciate, but I also would want to offer, what am I trying to say? I guess as we think about the brick, and as you have these different zones of the building, has there been any thought about slight variations in the brick color? Again, I know we want to sort of stick with I think the sort of gray iron spot makes a lot of sense, but I'm just trying to look at a view like this where it does feel monolithic. And I guess I'm wondering, how do we, either with some of these sort of carved moves, or how can we break up the massing? And this is an icon. This has some visibility from very far away. So I mean, you have this sort of almost like billboard-like potential up there, up high. You know, that's a canvas for something, and I guess I'd encourage exploration of what that can be. Again, I don't want to push you from the DNA of what you're trying to do, but I think that's an opportunity to kind of test and see how this reading works at different scales, and how the diagram has to evolve a little bit.
Yeah, fair point. We've talked about that. We have considered it, but cool. We can look at it again.
Are we feeling like maybe this might be a good time to solicit for public comment? Scott, I see you've added a comment to the chat. Are you able to unmute yourself if there's something you want to contribute? Sorry, give me 1 second to promote Scott to co-host. Sorry about that, Scott.
Margaret dinner, buddy.
No problem. Thanks, Christina.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you could go back to your precedent images.
Of the brick?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, so stop there. So I think what's really, you know, obviously these are a different scale, but I think one of the things that's really interesting and we discussed this during some of the reviews that we've had, is there's a kind of layering that's happening in this image where you see a kind of wooden screen that gives you another texture and helps to break down the mass. And I know that you're still in process on this, but I'm wondering if it might be something that you might explore on some of the large expanses that you have in the building.
You're talking about this element here?
Correct. And also on the other facade, you see that there's another kind of element above the glazing. No, on the other precedent.
Oh, here, sorry, here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's sort of other elements of another scale and another material that start to break down the overall mass of the building?
Yeah, that's we're trying to. It is a different scale, but we are trying to start to implement some warmth in some of these other elements. Particularly the lintels right now is what we're looking at to address that. There are some solar fins, particularly on this facade as well, some exterior fins to help shade that. That is sort of southwest facing, so this might be an opportunity to enrich it a little bit more in particular.
All right. Commissioners, I'm going to go ahead and ask for public comment. Great. So at this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public in attendance who may wish to contribute public testimony to raise your digital hand, and staff will call on you. If you're calling in by phone, press the number 9 on your dial pad to activate the raised hand function and dial 6 to mute and unmute yourself. Please state your name and any relevant project information, relevant affiliation information, excuse me, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Commissioners, at this time, I see no additional hands raised, so I will close the public comment period. We don't need a vote, but we do need to give some clear direction to the proponent team about what next steps are.
I can start. Again, I think this is really exciting progress. I think some of the things you mentioned in terms of how to treat that long walk, thinking about play, along with what Catherine was saying, is something to dig into. I think further refinement and sort of pushing what some of these big moves are doing to break up the massing. Again, I don't want to have you stray from the core DNA of your project, but again, how can we further get that fluidity, that movement, and pushing some of these brick bonding patterns, things like that. Again, I think there's a lot to like, and I'd say another meeting I think is probably warranted to kind of look at this next level of work, but certainly it's on the right track.
I agree.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to the proponent team for your patience as we were a little bit behind getting started, but it looks like we've recuperated just a little bit of time here for our next agenda item, which is going to be 10 Malcolm X Boulevard. And Daniel and D'Artagnan have already promoted you guys. I have just a very brief introduction here. So a proposed project at this location seeking Article 80B, large project entitlement, contemplates the development of approximately 115,000 square feet of residential use, 1,800 square feet of commercial use, preservation of 35,000 square feet of existing commercial use, and 33 off-street parking spaces in 3 buildings on a 1.62 acre site. This will be the first presentation of the proposed project to the design subcommittee following introduction at the June 4th monthly meeting. Commissioners Kotoridis, Love, Lubinow, Ron, Solano, and Sykes were present at the meeting and recommended the proposed project for additional review and design subcommittee. Commissioner Solano joins us this evening and should be prepared to deliver remarks at the start of deliberation, and it's my understanding that there's no one present at this time who intends to recuse themselves. And just a quick preamble here to the commissioners. I know, Laura, you were the only commissioner here who has seen this before. This will be new material for Commissioners Evans and Morris, but just wanted to say that there was some sort of late breaking news to the proponent team. We gave them some pretty significant design review feedback and actually had the team incorporate an additional curb cut to the site plan, and that feedback actually happened in between when you received draft materials and the version of the presentation you're going to see tonight. So there have been significant modifications made to the plan, and we're very appreciative to the proponent team for how much effort they made to kind of update all of their graphics to accurately sort of reflect that significant change. But you will find that this change kind of mitigates some feedback maybe that even I think specifically you had, Commissioner Solano, at the introduction meeting about the sort of idiosyncratic nature of what had previously been the rear yard condition, sort of bisected by a drive that was navigating some pretty significant grade. So with that, I will turn it over to the very capable proponent team to give their presentation, and I will start a timer for 15 minutes starting.
Thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, evening, commissioners. Thank you for having us. A quick thank you as well for all the feedback we got. I know, Laura, from you at our last hearing, and the other commissioners. I think we've taken it to heart. As Christina mentioned, made some last minute pivots, which I think are very beneficial actually to the overall project, not only in addressing some of the traffic, but just general open space and site, which we'll walk you through as well. And on my end, I have Dan Riggs with me this evening. A quick reminder of the site. So it's right kind of the gateway to Nubian Square. It's at a really interesting intersection of Plan Nubian, which was approved back in 2019 by the city, and the Highland Park Conservation District. So really kind of that interplay between these two within a robust area of transportation within a half-mile, 10-minute walk of the site. As we reflected back on how our project really sits within the neighborhood, we quickly did some nice research and saw back in the 60s, Dudley Street was actually a very active and dense hub of civic life in the neighborhood, with our building up here in the upper right, noted in blue. And in regards to Plan Nubian Square, a couple of the key principles, just to remind the group of all the work that was done to shape this, was really around activating public realm, public art, enhancing connectivity in and throughout the site, quality of architectural design, and appropriate massing and height. Within the study, there were three kind of scenarios that were outlined. Typical development, 5 to 6 story throughout several parcels in this area. Increased height, 10 to 12 stories. And then a mix of scales from 6 to 12. And all three we've kind of nestled in our project at the proposed 6 on Malcolm, and then it transitions to 3 stories, which we'll show you in onto Dudley Street. And as an overview, a couple key things here. Our project, as a reminder, and especially for Evans and Morris new to this, we will be preserving the commercial building here at 10 Malcolm X. Within the 2 parking lots, we are proposing a mix of housing, 111 rental units along the more commercial side of Malcolm X, anchored by a new public open plaza, which connects the existing to the proposed. And then as we transition up into Dudley Street, we've scaled down now to a 3-story, 12-unit homeownership building, which we'll explain in a minute. As Christina mentioned, we are reworking an existing curb cut that will allow us to have direct access to parking and remove it from kind of that circuitous cut through that we had before, which I know the abutters will also greatly appreciate. We've summarized the comments that we heard into a list of points really around density, height, and topography, understanding how this fits within the fabric of the neighborhood, understanding grading in relationship to the building entries, circulation, and open space, understanding our Malcolm X Plaza relative to Gordon Park and existing network of open space in the neighborhood, the materiality for the proposed buildings, and an expanded collection of context perspectives and elevations. So within that, you'll see this presentation is broken out to 4 sub areas that address all of these. For the site itself, quick reminder that off of Malcolm X, we're calling it elevation 0. When we flip over to Dudley, elevation 13, up to 21, 26, and then it transitions to 31 within the neighborhood. And to the east here is Nubian Station. The fabric really along Malcolm X, which is much more commercial in nature, from the School of Mathematics, UPS, to the bowling building. And then here what we've added is the recently approved 135 Dudley Street building, which transitions from an 8 to 9 story down to a 5-story as it comes towards the east end of our site here. Flipping over to the Dudley Street side, we expanded this context study to really look beyond our site here as we move up west towards the end of Dudley Street. We have the John Elliott Square, Marcus Garvey Gardens. You'll note that these are anywhere from 62 to 70 feet, but the key thing here is they're at elevation 50 relative to our site, which is anywhere from that 26 to 20 down to 0. And then as we move further down to our site here, you'll note our 3-story proposed, which is opposite a 4-story, 45-foot height building. And then on the corner here, I'll show you in a moment, is the 75 Dudley, which is also a recently approved 4-story building. We've also included a NOLI plan just to really show how our building is, I think, successfully kind of transitioning between a more commercial neighborhood into a residential. And you can see kind of that scale and change, which we'll get into a moment, but really just the way it's been able to navigate between the two, we think has been quite successful. Included a snapshot really of what's been recently approved, under review, under construction, and complete. So our proposed building here, this is a building I mentioned at 75 Dudley, 4-story, the 135 between the 5 to 9-story, the P3 up in the left here, and then kind of the development along the Washington Street corridor as it passes our site. At this moment, I'll turn it over to Dan, and then I'll be back towards the end.
Awesome. Thank you, D'Artagnan. I'll take us through some of the grading and open space for the project. So again, just to reorient us here, we're looking at Malcolm X Boulevard to the north, and the existing 10 Malcolm X Boulevard building in blue, our new 20 Malcolm X Boulevard building in that kind of salmon color, and the 70 Dudley Street building in yellow. As you can see, the landscape really ties these buildings together, and sort of in the center of the site, I think we all honed in on this at the last meeting. This is a great challenge and opportunity of the previous plan to really connect all of the open spaces of the site. And it was sort of interrupted by that parking access to Malcolm X from Dudley Street, as well as the ramps and small site walls that we needed to help negotiate the grades there. So if you switch to the next plan, yeah, thank you, D'Artagnan. You can see in our updated plan here, working with the BPDA to relocate that parking access down to Malcolm X Boulevard, where we've relocated that existing curb cut to a location that allows for a number of things. So it creates great vehicle queuing for that building off of Malcolm X, sort of takes that off of Malcolm X Boulevard. It allows us to include the garage entry at this lower level without it impacting the facade of the building or any of the public space along Malcolm X Boulevard. And it also allows for future adaptability with the adjacent parcel to the west of us. But really, most importantly, it really freed up that back space between our new residential buildings to be a more fluid and continuous open space there, as well as to regrade the parking to allow for that more seamless connection. So a really great opportunity to improve the plan. If you go to the next slide.
Yeah, and I think one thing to add there, working with Christina and the city on this, is a lot of the abutter concern was having the 20 Malcolm X come up onto Dudley. So this solution has allowed us to keep all of that off, which is, fantastic for the neighborhood.
Yeah, so I'll just take a few moments to walk us through some of the grading relative to the project here as well. So really, we break down the site into essentially 2 tiers. So we'll start at this lower level here, which comes off of that relative 0 on Malcolm X Boulevard. And this is the location really where we tie together using that new public plaza moment at the corner of Shawmut and Malcolm X. The ability to tie together the existing first floor elevation of the 10 Malcolm X building, which is about 2.5 feet above that, reconstituting the stairs and entry to that to really open up the plaza area itself, and then connect back to our new 20 Malcolm X building, which sits at about that relative zero moment at grade. And you can see some of the pedestrian connections, both in the plaza, but then along Malcolm X Boulevard to help activate that area. In the orange arrows, you can see where our planned vehicular entrance is to the building. And again, freeing up the facade area along Malcolm X Boulevard to be activated by both commercial space, the residential amenity, and then some of the bike programming along that entire facade. So keeping the parking sort of in the back. And then as the project site transitions up over to Dudley Street, you can see that the grade starts to slowly rise from 0 up to 3 in this image, and then up to about 11 to 12 feet in the following image if you go to the next slide. So moving up to the sort of second tier of the site, really tying this into the existing second floor grade of 10 Malcolm X Boulevard at 13.7 feet relative to Malcolm X. We've relocated the second floor of 20 Malcolm X Boulevard at that same elevation to really allow them to share that outdoor space at the rear of the site. And the 70 Dudley building really helps to kind of mitigate between that 13.7 elevation and the varying elevation along Dudley Street. So it allows it to sort of transition between those with minimal grade changes, while allowing that 70 Dudley building to be situated at a place where it can have a stoop entry that's very reminiscent of the other buildings that are all along Dudley Street. And again, I think you reinforced by this image the ability to really free up that back space by eliminating the parking connection and allow that to connect more fluidly in the back. You can also see in this image that the grade continues to rise behind the building along Dudley Street up the hill to the site behind us. You can see those elevations of 21 feet at the retaining wall, up to 26, and then up to 31 feet.
Sorry, just under 5 minutes, Daniel.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Kristen.
We'll fly through the rest. Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so moving on to how that plaza sort of relates to the other open spaces in the neighborhood is really a wealth of open spaces, and this is an important new node within that network. Really, the majority of the spaces are mostly passive, unprogrammed. And then there's a lot of lawn space, and really our plaza sort of differentiates itself and adds to that network by being a more programmed and activated plaza, as you can see in this image here. And picking up from a lot of the points in the Plan Nubian study, we've incorporated public art, the connections for pedestrians, and some of that street activation within the plan here. You can also see there's a bus depicted in that image. If you just go back quickly, it's on the right side of this as well. But we're thinking of that as being incorporated within the site, allowing for landscape buffering between the vehicular traffic, that bus stop, and the more activated part of this plaza. So allowing the landscape to do a lot of work there, and then really trying to activate and invigorate that space with public art. As we get into the building materials concept, so just to start, our primary move along Malcolm X Boulevard is really to reinforce that street edge and define the public space that is Malcolm X Boulevard. That secondary move there, you can see in the blue and the green tones, really to start to break down the scale of that building in relation to the other properties on Malcolm X Boulevard that you can see depicted in those purple dashes. And allowing that sort of blue mass of the building to relate and help bookend and define the public plaza, and the green piece there to refer back to the properties on Malcolm X Boulevard, but also refer back to the scale and sort of rhythm of the buildings throughout Highland Park as you go up the hill from our site. And really studying and referencing a lot of the great architectural detailing that's found throughout the neighborhood, both Nubian and Highland Park, and really kind of modernizing that through our design.
And from there, I think this is where we last had it. A lot of the comments we heard really helped us to refine the architecture. So prior proposal, here what we've done is selected our materials. We are proposing a magnesium iron spot brick, so a little bit warmer in the iron spot range. but we thought appropriate to be a differentiator to the existing red brick at 10 Malcolm X, so really to note what is new versus what is old. And then a key move I think that was helpful from commentary we had was to bring in a warm tone Trespa phenolic resin panel that actually captures both ends of the building and comes down at key points, really denoting public entry through the warmth of the materiality. So here you can see the residential entry, working with Scott, really refining the level of detailing, simplifying it to denote kind of main points of entry, the vertical nature of the brick columns, horizontal detailing, coining detailings at the end, and then kind of an extrapolated soldier course at the cornice line. As we move over to the the west end, as Dave mentioned, tying into the narrative of the townhouses behind us. Our prior design was, I think, a little bit colder and kind of disconnected from the page left. What we've done here is carried that warmth of the Trespa across, again, down at points of entry. Here you can see the prior, and then with the proposed, where the bay kind of cants out from the facade, we've reintroduced that warmth tone down to, again, points of entry within the building. The new garage entry that we mentioned coming off of Malcolm allowed us to further articulate and step back the scaling as well there. Included the architectural elevations throughout. Flipping over quickly to Dudley, just the scaling of that as we described picking up of Dudley Street. I think some of the comments were really around the monolithic volume we had before. And here we've come in and really looked to bring a townhouse scale to that. We have the warmth of the wood, the magnesium iron spot, which we think plays nicely with 10 Malcolm X, and then a lighter cladding. As we flip and look back up, Dudley, you can see that scale really well in keeping as we brought it down to the 3 stories. Narrative, architectural elevations as well included, just some sections relative to heights, Dudley relative to Malcolm, the distances between some of the abutting buildings. And then we've added a series of broader views kind of spinning around the site, which we thought would be helpful in describing kind of the placement of our proposed buildings relative to the context. This is looking back up towards the Roxbury Crossing from our proposed plaza. Here you can see the 2 buildings playing off, transitioning down to the neighborhood, and then up through Dudley. And I hope we ended on time, Christina. We're always trying to rush, but I want to make sure we get it all. So thank you again. We appreciate it.
Great. With that, I turn it over to you, commissioners, for the discussion.
Wow, when can we move in? You've done so much work and all of it for the good. Thank you. I know how hard all of this is, and to have done it in a short amount of time as well is much appreciated. And thank you for the context. The presentation really was just spot on. So I appreciate that kind of stepping back and then putting things in context. So if we could go to the back, the site plan that shows the new space in the back.
Sure. Certainly. Thank you, Laura, by the way.
I had my my sound off, but I think I gasped.
A good gasp, I hope.
Yes, it was. It was.
I mean, we will all gasp with a little bit of joy and relief here.
Yeah. So, so this is just frees up so much for the residents. The buildings don't feel like they're an attachment to the garage. It's just a win-win for every one of those buildings, because even the views from 10 Malcolm and 7 Dudley to have to look over that view of the garage entrance, this just improves it so much. And so now there's the hard work of kind of figuring out what is that space going to be. It's not exactly the most kind shape and proportions. And I just have a suggestion, which is that you of course, everyone always looks at precedents, but I would also do some scale comparison of, some spaces that the design team, appreciates, and see what could fit in there. Like, what is the right diagram for this? I don't think that every single spot needs to be programmed or, made perfect. There should be, you've added all this air. And so I think that that's an important thing to try and keep on. The tricky part is kind of getting people to, hang on, where's my, trying to find a pen, of course. There it is. So, this is tricky, right? And you've kind of already acknowledged it by like, oh, what are we going to do with that wall? And, we've got to make that grade transition. But I think, freeing this up is like such a great bonus for all of these rooms. Now you can start to feel this connection, but getting people, past this squeeze and into this area is probably the hardest design work that you have left on the site plan, for sure. But it's there, you can do it. Like, all you have to do now is figure it out. It's not, you don't have the same conundrum at all.
Right.
So I just thank you. It looks terrific. And
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that. And if I think, we share the same sentiment, I think we're very much excited to have this kind of reclaimed space. And candidly, with a little bit of time and our, talented landscape architects, we will design something meaningful there. I think our biggest thing was today just making sure we kind of incorporated that shift, because being able to move the vehicular access off of Malcolm is, I think, a game changer for the project.
And for the neighborhood.
For the neighborhood, yeah, right. That all-encompassing project, et cetera. So we want to make sure within the landscape design, as we get to that level of detail, it is very cohesive. It's meaningful. It doesn't all have to be the same. I think there's moments of public, private. It's a really great canvas to, put some good thought to. So thank you.
I should also say that I think that the architecture differences as well, just you're at a really rich level now, and having that material kind of blend across the Malcolm X Blvd facade. Oh, I know, there is one thing. What does the back of 20 Malcolm look like? What will be now facing that open space? I don't know that I saw an elevation of that.
Yeah, no, great question, Laura, and agreed on the use of materials. I think the comments we received were very helpful, and the plan, if I can flick through it, is to have the same quality, which we show lightly in elevations, but have that continue around the back as well.
Yeah.
So we're not treating a front to back, because it's really kind of a 360 site in our minds.
Yeah.
So here, if you can see, we are looking to, have that iron spot magnesium to the kind of variegated shades of the sembrant, and that comes around, and we maintain the warmth of the trespa, and then have it come down in key spots where program comes, in and out from activated space onto the landscape. So that same quality, it's not a two-sided building, it's a really single approach.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm happy to chime in here. This is the first time I'm saying this, and I do commend you on a smart strategy to kind of work with a really kind of tough site. It's a smart infill project. I think there's a lot of handsome moves in terms of the expression of materials, the brick detailing, the warmth. I guess maybe the one question I have is, where what other kind of comments are outstanding from the sort of, not just outstanding, but what have you heard from the community, and what are sort of just, what's their general sort of take on the project beyond just the sort of curb cut parking logistics?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That's a great question. We think we're in a pretty good spot with most of the abutters in terms of the setup of the project. I know that one of the biggest was the access to the parking, which we feel is in a good spot now. I know to some of the direct abutters, there was more concern with the immediate height at what we're calling 70 Dudley. Let me just go to a site plan, which we did prior to our initial BCDC hearing. That's gone through, 4 or 5 changes, where we've now, at our last round, dropped it down to 3 stories, 12 units. I know there's, with some abutters, that there will be concern around 20 Malcolm in terms of its 6-story height. Our positioning there is, just given the fabric of the neighborhood, the kind of contextual quality of Malcolm X itself, and the relative, I think what we've tried to do, or hope we've done, is explain the relative grading of the kind of more commercial side. It is anywhere up to 26 feet lower than Dudley Street. So that in itself, can be 1, 1.5, 2 stories, depending where you're on relative to Dudley to that height. But we have spent a lot of time, if you can see this image here, with the direct abutters.
Yeah. Well,
in terms of mitigating, opening up the widths, pulling back the buildings. We actually thinned out the center core to add more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I think we have pretty good with the immediate direct abutters, Vincent and Vivian and Greg and Dwayne, we've worked with very closely to just make sure they're in a good spot. We have some mitigation efforts around screening, fencing, landscaping. This shift in the access has also allowed us to move loading off. It's allowed us to increase the buffering that we can plant between the developments. So a lot of the finer details that we haven't gotten into with this commission, we have been working through with the abutters. But naturally, height will always, anything built in the city today that's not zoning compliant,
sure,
has height.
Yeah, I guess maybe where I was kind of going with that was I think there's a lot of smart moves on the building in terms of architectural expression, and how you kind of split at the seam of that core to kind of have almost 2 different expressions on the facade. I guess what I was thinking is, given that you are tucked down a little bit and you are on this, in some ways, kind of a gateway to Nubian Square, was there anything on the materiality, any thought of being maybe perhaps more expressive, or in terms of color palette, material choice? I think it's a, don't get me wrong, I think what you're showing makes a lot of sense. It's great. And I guess maybe what I would maybe encourage is, if there's I don't know, desire to go bigger or bolder with some of the colors, I think I'd be down. But again, I'm just one guy. So all that to say, I think it's a great project. And I was just more curious, had there been any community conversations about the expressiveness of the architecture, given that, you're not infilling amongst a series of houses, you're on Malcolm X, it's a little nestled, and there's some potential for it to be special, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we've spent quite a bit of time showing where we've ended up. We've been at it for just over 2 years now.
Got it.
The richness of the material, I will say, for a lot of this kind of market rate rental, we are, I think, pushing the bar in terms of the quality and materiality that we may not typically see in a neighborhood of this scale of rental. So, some of the richness around the brick coining, and, we found that this neighborhood has a lot of great tectonics and quality material that, Scott spoke to us, gave us a good schooling on. So we've tried to bring a lot of that in, and, as architects, we're very excited about it.
Great.
Can I just add to that? Because Jonathan, that was something that was a huge question for me in that, you know, could you push it? And I want to lift this up more as a philosophical question to think about, and that is Roxbury is deemed as the heartbeat of the city, right? And Malcolm X Boulevard is considered a main vein or a main artery to the heartbeat. So anything that's along that context has to add value as a main artery to that heartbeat. So when you're thinking about this, as I should say, as I'm thinking about what Jonathan has said that has been sitting with me is that boldness, that statement piece, or the ways in which design can show up in the context of being a part of that artery that's connecting to the heartbeat of Roxbury. Have you done all that you can do with this building and the design itself?
Thank you, Catherine. Also great insight there. I think we have one thing which we didn't get into, and maybe Dan, while I'm talking, you can pull it up if it's helpful, is a lot of work has been done with our team engaging in local organizations, communities. We've engaged 1% Gallery, which works with local artists. We really see the public plaza, which is really at the kind of public realm of the site, you know, from the moment we've brought in grading in throughout the site. You know, if anybody's been on the site now, it's got quite an incline. So we're pulling all of that back and putting in phenomenal opportunities for murals. I think if we go to the next, you know, we have sculpture, and then this is kind of meant to be a community-focused local use retail. So all of this really allows it to be shaped over time, because I think we're well aware within New Bean Square, there's so much great art that's happened that we can see this becoming another moment within that fabric, or context rather, where we can enrich the fabric through a lot of that expression. We've also done a ton around youth build and, you know, great sponsorships and workshop programs where they've come in. We actually had Embark hosted a second year in a row workshops with Youth Build, where they've taken this public plaza, had their design on it, you know, presented to the office. We've incorporated a lot of commentary. So I think it's going beyond the architecture itself. Is, you know, we're really seeing it as a way to make a solid impact. Oh, sorry. Oh, Dan's sharing screen. Sorry. You know, to really make an impact there. I don't know, Dan, if we need to pull anything up, Catherine, if that answers it, but we can certainly pull up more material.
That's helpful. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that I'm looking at the renderings of the plaza. I think there's definitely a lot of potential there, and I think maybe for me, I'm looking at, as you get into the next level of design, I'm thinking, like, I'm on the slide before this one, slide 30, with if you would get one more before that. Maybe I have a different deck than you do. Anyway, I guess as you get into like the next level of detail around that 2-story retail, I see the sign says cafe mix expression.
Yeah,
like there's just some moments there that can be more fun, whimsical.
Sure.
But I think it sounds like you've got a good sense of the place and desire to kind of connect meaningfully. So I think that's kind of what I'm just thinking about, like that next level of kind of grounding this in place. But again, I think overall it's a smart project, and excited to see it happen.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Could we go through, you had some really good aerial perspectives of the building within the context of the neighborhood, because I think, Catherine, that will help a lot with the question that you asked, which I think is a really sincere and important one. To kind of look at the context.
There's a good starting one.
Yeah. Is that the first one?
No, I can jump to anyone.
Okay, yeah, I think just you went through a series that I think were helpful from different aspects, from different locations. I'll just let you manage that.
Yeah, no, sorry, I know they were like 10 seconds each to stay to the 50-minute time limit.
Yeah.
But now we have the time. So we have a series of views here that we put together. So we had ended last time, I think, really on Malcolm looking back to kind of Nubian with that 135 Dudley here. This is the city parcel with the connection, BPDA parcel with the access off the drive that could allow a future connection there. As we kind of spin up, we're looking back down at our site. This is really that public plaza where the bus stop is, the 10 Malcolm X. You know, the design is to have kind of fully activated public realm along the base here, you know, everything from community focused retail, entry to the building, activated program, bike workshop, storage, to the driveway access. And then you can see as we transition up through, this is the 70 Dudley, the 3-story, 12 unit. And then this is moving, let me move my cursor for a second, as we move up towards the Marcus Garvey and Elliott, etc. As we flip, so this is kind of back further up Dudley, looking back towards Guild Row and the bowling building. So here you can see our 70 Dudley, we're calling 20 MX. You can kind of see the existing vegetation and city BPDA parcel to the west here. This is just, again, the architecture coming around. A further up aerial. I know it's hard, you'll hardly ever see this in real life, but we just thought in terms of being able to see this relative to kind of the strength of the Malcolm X Boulevard corridor, kind of Washington Street coming through. And then this is where that future, the 135 Dudley is here, which will, I think, further reinforce the Malcolm X corridor.
And just to add quickly to this slide, you can see too how our plaza sort of ties into this as like a wayfinding moment from the Nubian Square station right at the end of that view corridor.
Yes.
Nice moment.
Right, actually, and I think those, we looked when we were standing on site, just the potential of those canvases for the art and the mural will be very strong. And you see that actually through Washington Street as you're kind of walking through the neighborhood, really great spots that you see strong public art, which will be able to continue on our site. I think that was it. Yeah.
Laura, did you have further comment or did you just want to see the additional materials?
I just wanted to see that and make sure that Catherine had seen it too, since we went through it so fast.
Very helpful, thank you.
Would it be helpful if I asked for public comment before we do any kind of wrap up? Great. So at this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public in attendance who may wish to contribute public testimony to raise your digital hand and staff will call on you. If you're calling in by phone, press the number 9 on your dial pad to activate the raised hand function and dial 6 to mute and unmute yourself. Please state your name and any relevant project affiliation information, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Lee Peters, I see your hand raised. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you very much.
Excellent.
I'm Lee Peters. I'm an abutter, and I'm also part of the Highland Park Neighborhood Coalition. There's a development subcommittee that I was elected to be a representative of. And we're in conversation with the developers about this project. I can tell you what's come up over and over again for the 2 years is the height of the 20 Malcolm X building, particularly on the west side where it's next to 1.5 and 2.5 story houses. And I'm asking the commissioners to take a look at that. I think page 37 as part of the presentation shows the view from Dudley Street looking toward a relationship between a very large building behind regular sized for Highland Park houses. And I really hope that that would be brought into consideration among the commissioners. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Autumn, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi, yes. My name is Autumn. I'm a community member tuning in. I just wanted to say I think that this development and the proposed changes will be a great addition to the community. Just wanted to share my opinion and voice my thoughts.
Thank you, Autumn, for your comments. Dwayne Osborne, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi, Dwayne Osborne, one of the abutters. How you doing, Lee? Yes, I'm very, very happy to see that you all was able.
Sorry, Dwayne, it cut out.
Dwayne, all we got was "I'm very happy to see," and then we heard nothing else afterwards. Do you want to give that a shot one more time?
Yeah, that's good right there. I have a great phone, so I'm going to let it go with that. All right, thank you guys. Keep up the good work.
Okay. Commissioners, at this time, I see no additional hands raised. So we'll call that the close of the public testimony portion.
Is there Autumn?
Autumn gave brief comments.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. They were second. So commissioners, we don't need to take a kind of formal vote because it's design subcommittee, but we do need to issue some next steps. The proponent team has made a significant change between when the project was first introduced and the subcommittee, and you were seeing quite a fair bit of detail here in both the architecture and had a lot of discussion. So
I guess my question is, because of the extent of the changes, do we need to invite other commissioners to see this before it gets sent back to the committee, the full committee? I just have no precedence in this, Christina.
oh, it was, sorry, I thought you were speaking to the other commissioners.
I was actually,
Oh.
to all of you.
No, there's no requirement that additional commissioners see it. I think if the group here feels that the project is reasonably developed and able to take in the comments that you made today about further refinement of the open space and do those developments before the full commission, there would be no requirement that, another subcommittee.
Okay. Catherine and Jonathan.
Yeah. I think it's a product that's clearly been through a process, come a long way. I'm happy to propose that this again, this from BCD's perspective goes back to a full committee for further discussion there.
I'm actually not swayed either way, but I can lean on the full committee.
What are your concerns, Catherine?
I'm still, even with all the aspects of the great diligence has gone into how this building aligns with Roxbury and all the development that's going on. I think there's probably a little bit of work to still consider. But it may not be enough to warrant, another follow-up, but that's just something that's been ringing for me throughout this, even with all the other illustrations of how it looks long range up close. I just feel like there's still something missing, but I don't want to be the
Well, I mean, no, I hear that. I could be proposed that the proponent address that at full committee. Like, what is this project? How does this meet the community? And as part of this, And I know that's a very kind of loaded expression in a lot of different ways. So I acknowledge that when I say that, but I think there's certainly understanding the conversation today. I think there could be a response you all have about further explaining what's going on in the plaza, other moments that you can consider as opportunities in the project. I think I would imagine that could happen at full committee. And I
Yeah.
think that's also a spot where you would have a larger audience of more commissioners as well.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm interested in, is having more commissioners respond to this because of the extent of changes. And it doesn't preclude us from having those discussions and making recommendations to the city as they continue to work on the project with the proponents. So we still have time to have influence and sway in this, I guess, Catherine, because it's going to be that it's probably going to be that we make some stipulations about some things that the proponents still need to work on with the city, Boston Planning, and go from there. So I feel it's ready to go back to full committee, despite the fact that I'm dying to know how those spaces in the back are really going to work. But they're going to tell us that, I hope, next time around.
If I could add to, I think the comments are very clear, Commissioner Laura, Catherine, and Jonathan. So when we come back to full committee, we'll certainly address those.
Okay, so great. I think that's our recommendation.
Yeah.
Understood. Then we will work with the proponent team to get that ready. Okay, so thanks to the proponent, and of course, thanks to the commissioners and members of the public who gave their time this evening. We are only 21 minutes overdue. We will see the proponent team for 10 Malcolm X Boulevard at a future convening of the full commission. And we will call this evening adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Really appreciate it. Thank you
you all.